Let's begin, if we may. Thank you and welcome everybody to this Plenary 3 morning session entitled Wood, the Most Ancient Raw Material Taking Us to the Future. This plenary is organised by some wonderful partners, by the Sustainable Wood for Sustainable World initiative, which is jointly of the Collaborative Partnership on Forests, an endeavour bringing together the FAO, the Centre for International Forestry Research, the International Tropical Timber Organization, the World Bank, the Secretariat of the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, CITES, and the World Wildlife Fund, with the collaboration of the Forest and Farm Facility and the FSC and the PEFC and the ATIBT and the IFFA and the Brazilian tree industry. Thank you to all of those wonderful partners. Very, very much look forward to this session. We're going to start with a more entertaining format than is the norm. I'd like to invite Mr. Vicente Guayart to the podium. Vicente is a leading Spanish architect, an urban planner, an author, who is pushing the limits of what timber-based construction can be. Among his accomplishments, he's currently working on what will be the tallest timber-based building in Spain. I welcome Mr. Guayart to the stage.
Imagine you were there for the very first rainstorm. What do you think you would have done? You would have run for cover, right? The thing is, there wouldn't have been much to run to other than trees. Trees were our very first form of shelter, a roof of leaves and branches that we could crouch under. Then we thought about it a bit more, and the trees became branches tied together to protect us from the sun and rain, providing us with a place to return to, a place we'd call home. A roof of branches becoming a wooden hut, to a wooden cabin, to a wooden house insulated and protected. Then somewhere along the way, we started to use wood less and less, losing touch with our original natural resource. We started building more with other materials in the name of progress. Taller and taller we went, from brick and mortar to metal skyscrapers, reaching for the heavens. All this progress, but at what cost? With a growing population and a growing list of challenges, it's time for us to look back to move forward, to a way of building that's good for people and doesn't cost the planet, with a resource that is renewable and sustainable, one that grows itself, one that stores carbon rather than emits it, one that can create jobs and fuel planes, that we can build with faster and tread lighter, a resource that can scale so much further than we think it can. It's time to grow the solution a sustainable future needs.
Good morning. We came down from a tree in order to become humans. Our genetic ancestors are still there. That's why we feel so well in a forest. A forest is home. Trees are home. Vitruvius was the first architect that wrote a theory about architecture. He was a Roman architect, and when he imagined the original cabin, it was represented like that, with some trees supporting a triangle. Again, trees were home. I always wanted to be an architect. And I was building my first house in that tree, in the country's house of my family. It has several floors. The house is not still there, But you can see the mobile home that we use to travel around Europe. I have my education with my family traveling around Europe. We were visiting incredible buildings from incredible civilizations using materials like stone and brick in Roma, using stone in the Gothic cathedrals, using steel after the Industrial Revolution. So every civilization, every society built their aspirations with materials, with stone, with steel in their cities. When I studied architecture, it was the moment when the Bauhaus school and the modern architecture was the most representative. With this diagram made by Le Corbusier, it was somehow defined the architecture to come, how a new material, the concrete, could transform, could modernize the old structures of brick, the heavy buildings that we have from the past. But also in the Bauhaus, they were defining what it was called the modern city. This was the representation of the modern city with blocks always looking to south, monofunctional districts, streets that were mostly focused for the car, the pedestrian segregation. So these drawings had an incredible influence in the years to come. The prefabrication with the use of concrete facilitated that after the Second World War, there was a huge explosion of urbanization, of construction, of social housing all over the world. And after the 70s, there was a huge also urbanization in Asia, and especially in China some years later. Mobility was also part of the plan of modernity. We transformed streets into roads or highways. So the street was more connected or more related to transportation, to the speed, than not to the social relations. And obviously, the impact in the territory was huge. So we have been living in a world that developed in a very efficient way a plan that was defined, a role model on how to make cities that was defined in the 1920s. And as you can see, the cement and the fossil fuel has produced a huge impact in the CO2 emissions in the planet. Some years later, I became chief architect of the city of Barcelona. When you imagine Barcelona, you imagine a wonderful city with great architecture where you can walk in the sidewalks, but you don't imagine that it's full of contamination. Many days it's difficult somehow to breathe, as in many other cities around the world. And this is the impact of this that we call economical growth. The idea of the economical development has created a huge impact in the planet. And then we discovered that what the science was saying in the 60s, in the 70s, and in the 80s was truth. That we have, that climate was changing, that we have a huge impact everywhere in the planet with fires, with the sea level rise, and so on. When we were starting to fight for the climate, then we need to start to fight for our life. But you know, being a chief architect of Barcelona has a very deep responsibility. You need to plan to the future. And when we thought in that moment of crisis how we should plan to the future, we need to look at the past. We need to understand the history, where we come from, in order to see where we want to go. If we don't have a long-term plan, what we do is business as usual. Everyone is comfortable just running the reality without making big transformations. But now is a moment for a big transformation. And the good news is that some people decide to start to act. Europe decided that by 2050, we need to become a continent of climate neutral, zero emissions continent. And then China also has agreed to become carbon neutral by 2060, and so on. But today we still live in cities like this. We live in cities that are emitting CO2, cities that are receiving goods from containers all over the world, cities that are built with concrete, that are used in petrochemical to produce plastics, and so on. This is not a nightmare that came from the sky. This is something that we, as humans, we decide. We decide that for us, progress was like that. But this is not anymore the progress. We need to imagine what is progress now. Can we have a proposal for the future so strong, similar to the proposal that somehow had in the 1920s that supposed a radical transformation for the reality? We want to make cities like forests. We want that our cities absorb CO2. We want to produce food locally. We want to make cities that are using timber coming from the forests that are around, that are coming from their bioregions. Because if we are able to propose a solution that can transform the reality, we'll be able to save ourselves, we'll be able to save our planet. And obviously, we need to look at the planet like a whole and to understand the different singularities. The nature, the trees, has hundreds of thousands of years of evolutions. Architecture, you know, is only 10,000 years old. I'm sure that in 1,000 years, buildings will fly, buildings will go, they will be incredible, they will be amazing. But trees are much more perfect machines. We need to learn from the nature in order to imagine our future. In 2020 was published an article in the Nature magazine written, among others, by our friend Alar Organsky, that is one of the leaders of the Bauhaus of Earth, where he was trying to explain how, before urbanization, how the carbon was moving from there to the ground, how during urbanization we start to extract the carbon using coal and oil, and how we were using materials like masonry, concrete, steel, or composite in order to build our cities. But in order to define the future, we can imagine that we can use bio-based construction materials in order to store the CO2, store the carbon in our buildings. In the year 2000, we found the Institute for Advanced Architecture of Catalonia. Was the moment where the digital revolution arrived to us. It's the moment when all of us will start to have cell phones. It was the moment that Google almost didn't exist, nor Facebook, nor Instagram, nor anything. But we wanted to explore how digital technologies will transform the way we make architecture and we make cities. And now we know. We are using robots, we are using big data, artificial intelligence, and so on. But now the new frontier is not anymore to be digital. The new frontier is become real, natural. That's why we have created a lab here in the center of the metropolitan area of Barcelona. Again, everyone thinks on Barcelona as a very dense city, but as you can see, in the center of metropolitan area, there is a huge natural park. We decided to come back to the forest in order to learn what we forgot. And then what we are doing with our students is to try to learn everything that we know we need in order to develop this new kind of architecture. We are doing sustainable forest management in order to extract some wood every year. We are cutting that wood. We are drying these pieces of wood. We are using a small press to create CLT panels, and every year we do a prototype of a construction using timber that never came out from that forest. So that means it's very local constructions that are very well finished. And New York Times, for example, was talking about this building during the pandemic. This was built during the hard lockdown of 2020. New concepts for an unpredictable future. But what is important for us is to imagine this new model. Architects in general, and in the last years, we have been masters of making a wow, making after the Guggenheim effect, architecture seems to be a kind of iconic activity. It was more about the form than not about the content. And this is not possible anymore. Architecture now must become an art, a discipline that is connected with the design of the whole process, understanding where is coming the material from, which kind of manipulation we do to this material, how we are going to transform that material in order to make new kind of buildings. We are working with the European Forest Institute that is directed by Marc Palaye in the so-called circular bioeconomy. And we can imagine that the circle is the whole planet, extracting wood from China, from Africa, sending to China, making some product and buying these products in Europe. Or we can imagine how we can develop local economies and bioregions using local wood in order to develop local buildings, empowering the people and empowering the local economies. And that's why the new technology that will allow this, that is allowing this, is the called CLT, the cross-laminated timber, because we can produce very, I would say, simple panels using small pieces of wood. The timber don't need to be the best of the best, and using these small pieces of wood, we can create these panels, and with these panels, we can create a new generation of buildings, of social housing for the future of everywhere. In the year 2020, the city of Barcelona also took a very important decision related with policy. It launched the first competition with the reduction of the price of bidding was giving only 10% of points, but the reduction of CO2 emissions gave 25%. So that means that they say, guys, we want to have buildings that are clean. We are committed to fight with the climate change, and we want to prove it that this is real. And then the policy is fundamental in order to transform the reality. It's not enough to make great speeches. It's important to take decisions, make new regulations, and they to apply. We applied to this competition with my friend and partner, Daniel Ibáñez, and we won it. We won it, and now we are going to build the tallest timber building in Spain, as you see, with bigger terraces that were designed during the pandemic. The biggest timber building has been built already in Norway, is still 18 stories high. And UK, some friends from Cambridge University, they are working on designing skyscrapers made with timber structure. So we are at the beginning of a revolution. You can imagine, we are at the beginning, we are like in 1850, when architects start to use steel, and then we can do incredible buildings, incredible things using timber. But the solution or the biggest challenges are not in Europe or in America. The biggest challenges are in the emerging economies, in the global south. In Africa, urbanization is happening. There is an accelerated process of urbanization. In the next 30 years, more than 1 billion people will be urbanized in Africa, will go to live to the cities. So that means that we are not over. I mean, we are in a growing process of urbanization, and the question is how we are going to do it. Are we going to follow the rules of the 20th century industrialized economies, or we can jump directly and going directly to the new ecological world? Cities in many times in Africa looks like roads that are kind of urbanized. And if you see too many places, the kind of construction that they are doing are like this. This is the material that they can produce themselves very easily. And it's incredible that we are trying to get out of these new materials in, I would say, America and Europe. And we are sending these solutions, and we are contributing to these kind of solutions in these emerging economies. I was invited to make a project in Cameroon, and I am starting to do my first project in Africa. And then I had a discussion with the people, and I told them that I would like to make a radical proposal, that is to use the African timber for African buildings. And they say that this is impossible, that this is not happening, that they are building with concrete. This is what they know to do. And I say, this is not the future. We should think bigger. We should think on your kids. We should think on the planet, on how we are going to transform our realities. And we have great conversations, and at the end, everyone agrees that we are going to use local timber. Yesterday, I heard the Minister of Cameroon was describing very well how they are using sustainable forest management. I was visiting the forest, and they are doing quite well. So we are going to use this local timber. And for me, what is important is to think in a very systemic way. I don't want to make an icon. I don't want to imagine that we are going to do an exceptional solution. What I want is to find working with the people that know how to deal with this timber and how to create a new kind of industrialized timber construction, especially for Africa and for Asia. So this is the modular system we are going to use for our school, and this is the first phase of the school that we already start to build. What is important is for us and for the people that are promoting the school is that the education will be about mathematics, about languages, but also about the place where they live, the place where they learn. They will grow looking to these timber buildings, and we hope that in the future they will imagine how to use the same approach for the future of their constructions. But it's not only about buildings. The biggest challenge is urbanization. The biggest challenge are the cities. And that's why we had been working in a proposal that want to integrate many solutions in order to think how we could do something, a kind of new way of creating cities that are merging the principles of nature in order to make cities. It will be a kind of forest city that is not using anymore the traditional grid like cities like New York or Barcelona, but is using more like a kind of linear branched structure that can be adapted to any natural place, can be adapted to rivers, to forests. We want to make cities that are somehow growing with the forest. The fact of making a city must be an act of protecting a forest. We need to find this balance between growing and protecting. The only way to grow in a proper way is to manage the forest. And you see, the idea is that the first building that a city needs is a factory to transform the trees that we will manage from the forest to some material that we'll use for the constructions. So part of the challenge here is to work and to contribute and to collaborate for the education, for the development of technologies, in order to create a new kind of cities for this emerging world, where they can find the marketplaces that is what define many times what is a city, where they can find new forms of housing, where we can develop buildings that produce their own energy, We don't want to burn coal or oil to produce energy. We want to produce it. We want to use solar panels. We want to grow our food, the food near the cities. And what we would like will be to imagine how we can make cities with the same strength, with the same ideal of a better future that somehow was defined for the 20th century with a goodwill, but the result somehow was a catastrophe. And I think that in the limit we have two solutions, and that's why I say that the city of the future is a forest, because or we destroy our civilization, and then the forest will take over our cities in the same way that the Maya civilization was there, and now they disappear, and the cities are just pure forests. If we abandon a city, we'll grow a forest because the nature always came back. Or we need to define a new way of making cities that follows the rule of the natural systems in order to promote life and biodiversity. I think that urbanization can help to save ourselves and to save our planet, but we need to think in a smart way, and we need to work together in order to build a better future for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vicente. Can I please invite our panelists to the stage? Thank you all. Do come up. Very good. Thank you for being so brilliantly choreographed. It's never entirely straightforward to have people sit in the order in which they're going to speak, but you've done that, I think brilliantly. Maybe almost perfectly. So let me briefly introduce our fantastic lineup of speakers and panelists. We have Excellency Rosalie Matondo, Minister for Forest Economics of the Republic of Congo, Congo-Brazzaville that is. Sham Satkaro of the International Tropical Timber Organization to her left. To Sham's left, Eduardo Rojas Briales, who's the chair of the program for the endorsement of Forest Certification International. To the left of Eduardo, Cindy Chang, the director of the Forest Stewardship Council for the Asia-Pacific region. To her left, Jane Maloney. Jane's the executive director of the South African Paper Manufacturers Association. And to the left of Jane, Jose Pablo Unduraga, who is the manager of the High Value Wood Program of the University of Biobío in Chile. To his left, Dr. Hyun Park, president of the National Institute of Forest Science of the Republic of Korea. To the left of Dr. Park, we have Thais Linares Juvenal, team leader for Sustainable Forest Value Chain Innovation and Investments at the Food and Agriculture Organization. And to the left of Thais, Robert Grace of M&C Saatchi Group, South Africa. Fantastic. Thank you for being with us. Thank you to our panelists. So we just heard a really compelling presentation from Vicente about the contribution, the need that wood can make in our construction, value change for the express purpose of getting us to a carbon neutral future. Wood has for so long been looked on as an unsustainable resource, and of course, nothing could be further from the truth. This effort, this panel, our discussions, our speeches, our presentations and our videos are all about changing that perception and really accelerating momentum to something that's already happening. The inclusion of timber in the value chains that will take us to that carbon neutral future. And this is especially important because, ladies and gentlemen, we are living through an historic wave of urbanization, an enormous construction around that urbanization. According to the UN Habitat World Cities Report of 2020, 60% of the global population is going to be urban by 2030, and 96% of that urban growth will occur in the less developed regions of East Asia, South Asia, and Africa, especially in India, China, and Nigeria, just 3 countries. So my question, first of all, to Minister Matondo is, given this huge potential, given this huge urbanization, especially in Africa, and given the huge potential to put timber at the heart of that process of construction, what is the Republic of Congo doing to prepare for the moment and to seize the opportunity that it will bring for its timber industry? Thank you, Excellency.
Merci infiniment pour l'occasion que...
Thank you for your question. Once again, it is my honor to be given the opportunity to discuss the situation in the Republic of Congo. I was so inspired by the keynote presentation. It made me think about the kind of future society that we want to create. Do we want a European or American or North American model? Or do we want to create a new kind of society on the African continent? There have been various development models that we wanted to follow because African countries were treated as less developed countries, and we were considered less developed because we were not following the Western models. But this is a question that we're asking ourselves. Can we transform the current paradigm? Are we empowered to do so? Are we able to implement the model presented by Vincent? This is a big question that we need to address. In Africa, many countries are suffering from hunger. Then, are we capable of creating a different kind of future? The Republic of Congo does not export timber products any longer. As I mentioned yesterday, not only the Republic of Congo, but countries in the Congo Basin have decided not to export timber products overseas. So this was a collective decision that we made a couple of years ago. Now, timber processing is taking place locally. When we look at the current situation in the Republic of Congo, there are wood tables and wood chairs in schools. These are made of imported wood products. But now, in our country, we are trying to produce school desks and chairs made of local wood. You may think this is not a major initiative, but you may have seen in documentaries or movies that in Africa, many students are sitting on the dirt ground in school. But in the Republic of Congo, we have many trees and wood resources. We've decided to utilize these resources to build schools for our children. In the past, we were not able to do so because we focused more on exporting wood products, and foreign capital was used to process wood resources. But now, we believe that African countries need to strengthen their capacity and capabilities in processing and using these wood materials locally. In many cases, when they process wood resources locally, sometimes it is more expensive than processing them overseas. So we need to think about this question of whether we are able to do so. And to achieve our capacity building, we need technology transfer from other countries. So that was what I wanted to say. So first of all, we have already decided to stop export of timber products, and we also need to build our strength and capability to process wood raw materials locally, and to do so we need technology transfer. As you saw in the Congo Basin, we offer nature-based solutions, and the Congo Basin absorbs about 40% of the global carbon emissions. So we need to preserve the Congo Basin, and by utilizing nature-based solutions in the Congo Basin, we may be able to achieve sustainable development. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Minister Matondo. So Congo, the Republic of Congo, and other Central African countries, you have the resource, you understand the opportunity, but you want to add the value yourselves. You want to do the processing, the manufacturing of these wood products yourselves. You spoke of the need for technology transfer. You also need markets for the products that you hope in due course to produce. I wonder if you could give us a comment on the commitment of the Paris Olympics to use wood products, and whether that's something, controversial perhaps as it may be, that could be of advantage to Congo-Brazzaville.
Oui. Merci beaucoup. Pour ce qui est des Jeux Olympiques.
Thank you for that question. With respect to the Paris Olympics, what I can say is that for products coming from the Congo Basin, these embargo measures are not reasonable. And for us, we're committed to sustainable development of the wood industry and wood resources. Therefore, I do not really understand why these tropical timbers are subject to embargo and other restrictive measures. So we went to Paris and we met with the mayor of Paris, and we argued that we could not understand the reason behind this decision with respect to tropical timber products. These timber products were not produced by illegal logging, but there was already a decision made for the Paris Olympics. But we are proud of what we are doing with our wood resources. And in the Republic of Congo, we have been managing our forests sustainably by utilizing certified tools and instruments. And when you come to visit the Republic of Congo, you will be able to see the reality. Some people may say things that are not part of reality, but if you come to our country, you may be able to see it for yourself, that the tropical rainforests in the Republic of Congo have been maintained and developed in a sustainable manner. And we are strictly following certification standards, and we have been implementing sustainable practices in forest management. Therefore, in this Congo Basin, there are these local residents, they are not involved in illegal logging. I'd like to mention that.
Minister, Shamsat, your organization, the ITTO, is responsible for promoting sustainable timber production in tropical countries. Now, the Minister has just given us an example of where there is just insufficient trust, insufficient confidence that tropical forest countries can do that sustainably. I wonder if you could speak to that. Is that lack of trust well-founded? And how do tropical forest countries overcome that lack of trust?
Thank you for that question, James, and thank you very much, Minister Matondo, for bringing this point up. This is a perennial problem that the tropical forestry and industry has faced for as long as I have been in the field. That's coming close to 30 years. There is a lack of trust, and sometimes even I fail to understand where that comes from, because it appears that tropical producing countries have to jump through those extra 5 to 10 different barriers to prove that what they're doing is actually in line with international expectations. From my previous experience and also from what we're currently doing right now, the most effective methods is to advocate very strongly, do very strong communications and outreach, and this has to contain the facts as to how compliance is actually being achieved. There has to be utilization of safe governance systems, and this needs to be a workable governance system. I'm not saying that there has to be only one. There can be multiple governance systems, but they need to be accepted and agreed to by all. In other words, they need to be systems that can be met. And there has to be a complete change in the mental perception of certain consuming markets and stakeholder groups on what is it that tropical forest countries are trying to do. Because the constant negativity on tropical producing countries, of course, is a huge barrier. Like Madame Matondo just explained with Paris, we had this also with the London Olympics. And I remember I was based in Europe then. But we put up a very good, strong path forward jointly between the PFC and the FSC at that time. But it appears that the Paris Olympics is completely ignoring that. And again, I don't understand why. So we have been trying to help our member countries in trying to overcome that barrier. But the French government are saying that, oh, it is an independent body. I'm sorry, that's not a good answer at all. It is not an acceptable answer. I hope I've addressed your...
You have, very well. Thank you very much. Just a little bit of a kind of situationer for us. With or without greater market access, what is the potential for the sustainable tropical forest timber industry? What's the market outlook, if you like?
Is that...
For you, yeah.
Thank you, James. I mean, currently, as we know, the whole world has been reeling from the COVID-19 pandemic. It has had huge impact on the markets, particularly in terms of fractured supply chains and market diversion. So it has, of course, impacted upon operations on the ground, but from the feedback that we have had on our on-the-ground consultants who contribute to the market reports that ITTO publishes on our website, the least impact has been on the harvesting side. That has been pretty much unaffected. What has been most affected is the distribution of products, and as we speak, I don't know whether all of you have listened to the news, but look at what's happening in Shanghai. Containers are piling up on the wharf, ships are caught out in the middle of the sea, products are not being distributed, so the whole import and export chain is broken. Now, naturally, I think we all also know that the shipping routes occupied by China are the ones that happen to control world trade. So if something goes wrong on the China end, the rest of the world is affected. Shipping costs are up by 10 times the normal rate. So anyone involved in the shipping of wood products around the world is currently being bled to death just with shipping costs. So there is a huge urgent need to address these bottlenecks, number one. Number two, we already know that the tropical timber and forest industries are critical elements towards climate change mitigation and adaptation. This has been recognized in the IPCC reports, which clearly states that the use of wood products is essential in meeting climate change targets by the year either 2030 or get closer to the targets, or by the year 2050. Opportunities are tremendous. Also, particularly recently, following COP26, we've also heard that the GEF 8 Replenishment Fund, with $500 billion under their wing, are prepared to invest. We have heard so many wonderful presentations here at the World Forestry Congress from different stakeholder groups, which are calling for investments in tropical forests. We have to stay central to the argument. It's no good by some advocating the fact that forests are important, but the creative investments need to go into tropical forestry.
Great.
In order to make it a viable industry for the future, in order to address the three critical elements of the SDGs 2030, as well as economic returns, social and environmental protection.
Great.
Thanks, James.
Thank you so very much, Sham. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Sham, for getting us off to that good start. We're going to have a little bit more entertainment now. Another video, the importance of forests to sustainable development. Wonderful. Eduardo Rojas, you've worked on all sides of these questions, on policy, on science, in the forest, outside the forest. You're now working on the bioeconomy, especially. Can you give us some sense of whether we have the materials available, whether or not at a commercial level of development, to achieve that bioeconomy?
Thank you, James, and I would first like to thank the invitation of the organization and congratulate both FAO and the team led by Peter Tsoka for this outstanding Congress, and of course the team of Korea that are doing a great job. Allow me to these questions just to recall in the bridge to what Vicente Guayart just commented. The key issue here, and where the strong contribution to climate change is in the substitution. All the other materials that are not natural, that are fossil, that are mineral, need to be heated into high temperatures, be metals, be cement. And this needs an enormous energy, even in its recycling, whereas wood, bamboo doesn't. And there is an enormous gain in fighting to climate change. It's a hidden gain because it is an embedded energy. Going to your question, James, I think it's important because one of the counter-arguments is frequently, we will not have enough. So there are a range of arguments that show that this is not the case. At this stage, of course, if we would shift everything, and now there would be eventually some stress. First, I would like to recall a very interesting publication of FAO when FRA 2015 was published, taking advantage that the cutting date for climate change is 1990, comparing the situation 1990-2015 in several factors. And comparing the fact that humankind has grown 37% in these 25 years, which is a generation. On the other hand, GDP has grown 150%, while the wood consumption of the world only grew 6%. What is the conclusion? We have advanced a lot in these 25 years in using wood much more efficiently. Recycling much more, especially in the area of pulp and of paper, but also in material use. And we use less wood for the same uses. So this is shown, and it is not a time where wood has either lost or gained a lot. It's a relatively stable period. The second argument is that we have 70% of forests as semi-natural forests, and only of them around 500 million. Basically in Europe, also Korea, Japan, Eastern US, and so on, are well-managed, capitalized semi-natural forests. Most of the others are relatively abandoned, degraded, and there's a wealth of improvement there. Even if the production is not extraordinarily big, their size is enormous. A third element, we are not speaking just about wood. Wood is the pillar, obviously, and with CLT, the pillar is easier to build. We have other non-wood forest products that may be as well interesting, and very especially considering your comment that was very important, that the big building activity will happen in the global south. There is another material, forest material like bamboo, that has an enormous role to play. It is already used in construction, and there, I don't exclude that CLT could not be built also out of bamboo. It grows very rapidly, so it can be an interesting species for the degraded area. And there are other collateral materials like cork and so on, but basically these two are very important. And we have, in general, to think in this trend towards bioeconomy that we need to incorporate also agriculture. It is very important. In many countries, there will be not a political momentum only with forestry. Forestry is unfortunately a too minority sector in size. Agriculture has the potential to contribute to bioeconomy, eventually more in other areas than construction, and of course also the sea through biotechnology. It will be with all these three sectors that we will reach the momentum to a framework that is suitable to bioeconomy. For example, changing the VAT. Today, a beam of wood and the same of concrete have the same VAT. It is not correct. So there is a way to go. And then, of course, if there is more demand and a certain increase of price, there will come more investment. This is obviously, if you see the areas that have moved in vineyards from massive wine to quality wine, suddenly the vineyards are in a perfect fashion, and they produce, of course, more. So this is also important. There is frequently a school that says, better we skip out of nature economy. No. If we skip economy, abandonment, and then forest fires will follow, and degradation. That's not the way. And important is also that we move exactly to a virtuous cycle. If, like Minister Matondo just commented, the local, in the Congo Basin, using wisely the wood species that are not interesting to export, and they can substitute and so on, you start the virtuous circle because you cannot exhaust the forest, otherwise you are losing your economy. It's like the fishing sector. They will never, local fisheries overexplode, because then where are they going to fish? And we have areas that have been fished in the Mediterranean for thousands of years, because those communities want to have the resources to along them. So it's important that we go towards the synergies and not towards the trade-offs. This is an important issue here as well.
Okay, good, good. Thank you very much indeed, Eduardo. So there's a very sort of high-level view of the resource availability from Eduardo Rojas. Minister Matondo has given us a sort of national governmental view of the potential for Congo-Brazzaville. Sham has given us an industry perspective. Cindy Chung, you work with the actual producers of these materials. Can I ask you specifically whether smallholders in Asia are going to find opportunity to produce wood for value chains that will take us to carbon neutrality? Can they be part of this process, and how do they look at it actually?
I think moving back, we talk about the construction sector where this session is focusing. The construction value chain at the moment is not as yet a key value chain for this region, but it's definitely a very important one, given the fact that the growth of the economy and development in this region, and that it is actually a contribution for solving the climate crisis. So, and that we also, it is certainly a very important one, and is growing. And with that, I'd like to move into one of the related value chain that is very related to furniture, which is, the construction, which is the furniture value chain. I can give you some statistics. For FSC, we have over 50,000 chain of custody certificate globally. And of that, 24% of this value chain certificates are focusing on furniture. And 2/3 of it are in the indoor furniture, whereas 1/3 of them in the outdoor one. And if you're looking at the furniture sector, basically it's split between Europe and APAC. And APAC actually have a lion's share of 42% of this market share. And in this region, the major countries who play in this value chain is like China, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia. So this is the overall picture.
Let me ask you to sort of hone in a little bit on those producers, those smallholders. Now we know that smallholders, indigenous peoples, often struggle to get certification for their product. Can you tell me a little bit about that and what FSC is trying to do to help them through that process?
Yes. Actually, I'd like to introduce one of the solutions that we are moving forward from an FEC perspective. We're developing a regional forest stewardship standard. We call it RFSS. And in fact, there will be an in-depth presentation tomorrow morning. Here, for this occasion, I will just give a little bit of prelude about this particular standard, why we are doing that. We identify smallholders in Southeast Asia is basically produces a large volume of timber. But as you just mentioned, they have a lot of challenges. Generally, the average size of these smallholders is less than 3 hectares. And they are, and the operation is very simple, and they also have the management also have very low capacity, and generally the education level of these operators are also very low. So having to move them to a full certification process is very difficult because it's too complex for them to be able to follow, and it's also costly. So with that in mind, we have developed a simplified version, which is RFSS, and we are aiming to launch it sometime in this year. I must say I'm very happy to announce that the first part of it will be launched in Indonesia in the coming month. In fact, it's been approved, and the effective date is, we're looking at July. And this RFSS is being developed for 4 pilot countries, namely Indonesia, Vietnam, India, and then Thailand.
Great. Thank you very much, Cindy, for that. Let's have another brief video, this one on forests and sustainable production and consumption.
Wood helps provide millions of people with clean and safe drinking water, cook food, and build shelter. But wood can do even more. Wood can build skyscrapers and replace plastic. With advances in science, wood is changing how we see the world, how we dress, and how we move in more climate-friendly ways. Through nanotechnology, wood can help us heal and find new cures. Wood is even taking us to space. When forests are managed sustainably, wood is a renewable resource. Choose sustainable wood for people and the planet.
Very good. So, ladies and gentlemen, trees are the source of over 5,000 products that we use every day. The question that we're really discussing is here, how do we unlock that potential? How do we magnify that potential? We're already utilizing it, but how do we increase our use of timber on a massive scale in a sustainable way to take us towards carbon neutrality? Addressing that question, we're now going to have a video message from Florian Greichen of Scion Forest Products, a company based in New Zealand. And I might add that Florian, though he sent his message by video kind of ahead of time, is with us remotely online. So good to have you with us, Florian. Thank you. And his video, please.
Hello, everybody. I'm sorry I can't be with you, but thanks to the organizers for giving me the opportunity to talk to you about 3 critical issues. Number 1, why is the use of sustainable wood in construction a critical step towards climate neutrality? Number 2, why is wood both the answer to the challenge of our generation, climate change, but also the key to unlock the opportunity of our generation transition to a circular bioeconomy? Trees are the source of over 5,000 products we use every day. So how does science, technology, and innovation unlock this unprecedented potential? Why is the use of sustainable wood in construction a critical step towards climate neutrality? Well, trees and forests are known to be one of the natural solutions to mitigate climate change. Using sustainable wood in construction allows to extend the carbon storage from the forest to the buildings. And while these buildings are erected and lived in, replanted trees will continue the carbon sequestration process in the forests. Building with sustainably sourced wood can be considered a carbon pump, a natural carbon capture and storage system. Wood products have typically lower manufacturing, transport and construction greenhouse gas emissions compared to alternative materials. Innovations in wood product manufacturing are leading towards higher performance engineered wood products that can replace non-renewable building materials. This results in construction technologies that lead to much taller and much bigger timber buildings. An example of these opportunities is Science multi-award-winning innovation hub Te Whanganui o Tutiata. It's a 3-story, 2,000 square meter office showcasing timber engineering, innovations, and achieving embodied carbon neutrality. So why is wood both the answer to the challenge of our generation and also the key to unlock the opportunity of our generation? Well, climate change is a global disruptor, economically, environmentally, and socially. The biggest cause of climate change is the use of fossil raw materials, and this cannot be eliminated without replacement, and replacement has to come from the forest bioeconomy products. Globally, around 75 to 90% of CO2 emissions come from coal, from oil, from natural gas. The core issue is the phasing out of fossil-based products. So you cannot achieve this without also using forest bio-based products. Trees are absolutely magic. We love them. They can contribute to mitigating climate change in several ways. They store carbon and provide material for our future. There are enormous opportunities for continents, for countries, for companies that decide to be a disruptor than rather being disrupted. There's the opportunity to address many sustainable development challenges simultaneously through sustainably sourced, grown, and manufactured products from trees, be it bioplastics, bioenergy, or construction materials. Right tree, right place, right purpose, we can have it all. But we must shift our economy from linear to circular bioeconomy. And this shift will give us power not only to reduce waste, pollution, greenhouse gas emissions, but also to grow prosperity, jobs, and resilience. And lastly, trees are the source of over 5,000 products we use every day. So how does science, technology, innovation unlock this unprecedented potential? Well, anything and more that is made from petroleum today can be made from a tree tomorrow. Reducing the use of fossil raw materials globally and replacing them with these really great bio-based products requires innovation. The circular bioeconomy is needed to get to net zero emissions, so for both the material and the energy side. For energy, 55% of the emissions can be tackled through transition to renewable energy. The remaining 45% of greenhouse gas emissions come from the way we make and use products. So this is an absolute unique moment that brings tremendous opportunities for forest and other circular bioeconomy underpinning sectors. So these opportunities are cross-sectorial. They're enabled by utilizing side streams and circular economy operating models that increase product value, but also resource efficiency. So scientific research, development, innovations are absolutely needed for the development of new materials, for new products, for new manufacturing methods, and for new services. From our perspective, from science perspective, we are working with partners to open up opportunities and providing solutions for the 21st century. If you want to hear more, shoot me an email. Enjoy the rest of your conference. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Florian, and thank you for being with us online. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's the whole ball game, really. Getting to net zero means phasing out fossil-based products, energy and also materials, from our value chains, from our economic development model. And natural products, wood, already gives us a huge opportunity to do that. I loved it when Florian said that building in wood effectively gives us represents a carbon pump, a form of carbon storage. And already we're seeing innovation, investments in science and technology that are expanding the possibilities of timber in construction, making bigger buildings, more and different and more technologically advanced products. So this is already happening. The question is, can we put our shoulder to the wheel to accelerate that progress? And actually, this takes us really to you, Jane, of the forest industry for many years. And you've been an evangelist in that industry for modern wood products, especially, I think, pulp-based products. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the most marketable modern wood-based products. And maybe, give us some bold predictions of where that kind of technology is going.
Thank you, James. Bold predictions. Well, I predict that the future is wood. Pulp and paper, the industry has been ready for this for quite a while, but now the market is ready for it, and that is brilliant. So when you look at pulp, start off with your tree. You have your tree, your magnificent tree. Then you have wood chips. And in the process of making pulp, you have black liquor. Black liquor, energy for the pulp and paper industry, which incidentally is 40% less carbon intense than using straight fossil fuels. And in that process, you can have a stream that you take off, and you can have lignin, and you can have cellulose, and you can make all sorts of bioproducts from that stream. But think pulp again. Think paper. Pulp, you can have dissolving pulp. Dissolving pulp is fantastic. Dissolving pulp you can make into lyocell fibers or viscose fibers. Think sustainable fashion, that beautiful apparel that magnificent woman walks out in, or that fabulous man, that fabulous person walks out dressed in a tree. That is something to get excited about. So yes, I am an evangelist for trees and for what they can make.
And just a quick follow-up, and I ask you to be bold, and I ask you to be imaginative, and thank you for being so, and also enthusiastic. How far are we from a future where wood-based materials are routinely used as fabrics for people to make, for fabrics for people to wear?
It's now, it's here. People are wearing it. And the industry traditionally, when I joined the industry back in the 90s, it was viewed as very, very conservative, very straight. I would say that right now it is the most innovative industry around. And you see things like xylitol. Xylitol is used in chewing gum. It's used as a sugar substitute. And you may not have known this, but it has incredible, and maybe I should look at my crib notes, it has incredible antibiotic capabilities. So when you're chewing on your chewing gum or brushing your teeth, you can think about the tree that actually supplied that. So yes, we are using wood products across the board. They're almost a hygiene factor. And one of the things that COVID did for us, James, it also made us realize how important paper is. And if you think in our country, our government has actually recognized carbon sequestration in our carbon tax equation. We have an S for sequestration. That is forward thinking. They have recognized the storage of carbon in harvested wood products, and that is your pull factor for growing your trees. 60% of the trees are grown and planted for pulp. So the industry is ready for it, definitely.
Thank you very much, Jane. So, ladies and gentlemen, we really are trying to cover the bases here. Again, the science, potential for the industry, the economy broadly, national economies, industries, but we do want to keep sight of producers, especially smallholders. And with that, can I call for our next video, Humans of the Forest, Roberto's story.
Dobbiamo imparare da quello che la natura ti insegna, non andare contro la natura, ma capire le sue regole, attraverso il costruire, attraverso l'edificare diverso, in maniera antisismica, attraverso il legno, attraverso strutture che siano elastiche e che non crollino e che nel giro di poco tempo non distruggano tutti i sacrifici di una vita. Quello per noi è importante. Quindi la nostra idea che si sviluppa con legno ha bisogno assolutamente di un legno sostenibile, di una filiera sostenibile che parta veramente dal legno alla base, dal legno interno alla foresta, arrivi a noi, che sia certificato, che sia veramente seguito attraverso tutta la filiera. Noi stiamo seminando, voi avete seminato e si raccoglierà insieme il frutto di questo lavoro che serva per far rinascere una comunità che purtroppo è stata annientata dal terremoto.
God, don't you just love drones? The quality of these videos is amazing, actually. Jose Pablo, you come from a country, Chile, with a really large forest industry. By FAO estimates, your industry is responsible for more than 200,000 formal jobs and directly contributes more than $5 billion to Chile's GDP. Can you tell me just a little bit about construction in the Chilean context? Has Chile already embraced wood-based construction and the future potential of it?
Yes, it's an honor, a pleasure to be here, and thanks for inviting me, the organizers. Yes, about the question, Chile is embracing the wood construction. There are many efforts, first from the government between 2015 and 2020. The government bring possibilities to join a governance between public, private, and university in order to make a governance in 5 forest region to improve the small and medium company conditions, especially foresters and sawmills. And in this way, when you prepare the offer, you can step and step produce a change. And what's the possibility of that? To have a roadmap for species diversification, technological transfer, and to have a structural timber between the big companies and the small and medium companies. We have a successful model today, but in the next 10 years, we need to include this kind of companies. In this kind of effort, private, public, and academic, promotion reference works like social housing, kindergarten, healthy construction, education construction, and the government is the first investors of that. If you produce this change, the private sector, especially the construction, will be the possibility to join and to investment and to make an interministerial relationship with health, public works, and education. And this is the first step, like in Chile, are doing the difference, preparing for the next step. What is the next step? Is the construction sector wants to do this demand. And we are the possibilities to do in the next future.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Another question, if I may. Chile naturally has big plans to expand this already quite mature forest industry, timber industry. And with that comes all sorts of potential tensions and conflicts and trade-offs in terms of managing the trade-off between agriculture and forestry. You want scale when you grow an industry, but when you go for scale, it's hard sometimes for smaller producers, smallholders, farmers to capitalize on that opportunity. I wonder if you could just speak to us about managing those tensions, potential conflicts and trade-offs.
It's a good, very question, because the possibility to include the farmers, the small foresters, and include in a mosaic of land uses, you need to establish legislation, regulations, and to establish rights about that. For this reason, the Senate of Chile and the Science and Future Committee the last year prepared a strategy of how we can bring a Chilean economy based in forest. In this way, if we think in construction, furniture, fiber, energy, biomass, energy, and all this kind is possible. Now we have a special proposal, 40 proposal, on a equilibrium of the carbon storage, sequestration, and substitution. But this kind of thing is possible only if you make a balance between forest for production and forest for conservation. And at this stage, we are ready. We are developing a roadmap, and 90% of our industry are based on plantations, radiata pine, eucalyptus, and are very successful. But only 1% we use the native forest, are temperate forests, and we have an opportunity to include, and especially 1 million hectares of this native forest are owned by many small farmers, small foresters. There being a possibility, and in a balance that we can produce the change. Maybe from 20% now wood construction in 10 years up to 30% or 40%, and if today we only have 60% of our emissions, our carbon emissions are netting of our forest. We have the different gap of 40%, and we will do about the new forest management of sustainable management of native forest and wood construction, in fact.
Thank you very much indeed, Jose Pablo. Dr. Pak, we've discussed government, industry, producers, as well as some science and economics. Can I ask you about consumers? So we've established, I think, already in this conversation, that there's a clear link, clear potential for sustainably produced timber to help us on our path to carbon neutrality. Do consumers here in Korea understand that link and that potential?
Okay, first of all, thank you for inviting me to participate in this fantastic panel discussion. But simply saying that the answer is no. Actually, I spent a lot of time to explain the linkage between the forest, sustainable forestry management and the utilization of wood product last year. As you know, the Republic of Korea has been recognized as a representative of successful reforestation country in the international community. And Korean people also have had the enchanting experience of converting devastated mountains into good forest. Thus, in Korea, logging for timber production in forest is recognized as deforestation. So in the past, actually, we planted tree a lot under the slogan that if you love your country, then plant trees. So planting tree is patriotic, but felling down, logging is unpatriotic. That's the thought of general Korean publics. So the consumers. So even though some people love to use wooden products, they hate to fell, they hate to log domestic trees. So we need to import a lot of lumber from abroad now. Meanwhile, Korean forest is started to be established about 7 years ago. And actually, I'm the soil scientist. And I emphasize that as a soil scientist, due to soil conditions and climate conditions, Korean trees cannot grow until 100 or 200 years. Because we are in the temperate zone and the soil condition is still poor. So if the tree is older than 50 years, then do not grow well. That is, the old trees have less contribution to carbon absorption, for mitigation of climate change. So they need to be substituted to the younger trees. But it's almost impossible. So as Mr. Florian Garrido online from Sion, he explained a lot, and I tried to explain that one too. But still, we have some gap for the understanding between foresters and general public. The reason why actually I proposed to host WFC about 5 to 6 years ago, because we wanted to make some opportunity for the publics to understand this kind of talks. And I hope enlarge the understanding of sustainable forestry and utilization of timber products. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Park. A follow-up question for you, if I may. Yesterday, as I'm sure some of you all know in the audience, in the Ministerial Forum on Sustainable Wood, we heard a call for scaling up sustainable wood-based pathways. So my question to you, Dr. Park, is what can governments do to scale up in that way? What can they do to accelerate this change? What policy change, perhaps, or regulatory change do we need?
Yes, the long-term use of wood resources has the effect on delaying the release of carbon stored in wood to the atmosphere. So wooden architecture, wooden buildings, is a typical solution, as we show in the videos. But in reality, actually, traditional Korean buildings were wooden. So Korean also used the wooden residential facilities in the past. But most modern Korean people do not have experience with wooden buildings, and they are not aware of the advantage of wooden architecture. They just wanted to protect forests. They just do not want to use wood products. So it is necessary to expand various wooden architectures that people can experience. There is still not much demand for wooden architecture in the Republic of Korea, as about 10,000 buildings are constructed a year. So various policies are being implemented to revitalize wooden architecture. It is recommended to use wood as a raw material for public buildings. And the government is making efforts to help people experience the advantage of using wood by promoting the urban wood projects on a trial. So in addition, we are also trying to show that the wood can be used in various places, furniture and utensils such as cups and dishes, etc. In case of me, actually today maybe you can see my watch. It's a wooden watch. Actually, I'm wearing this one, and I'm showing this one. And sometimes I use this one as a present for the Congress, National Assembly members, to explain the value and the usability of this wood, especially domestic wood. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Park. So we had hoped to be able to invite you to ask questions. We're running a little bit short of time, but if we have a question or two, I'm sure we can fit it in. Would anybody like to ask a question or two? And I hope that we will have some microphones to you if you have a question. Any questions?
I do. Here, back here.
Yes. Thank you.
My name is Luciana Varcusa. I'm an architect from Brazil. And I do have a question working in this industry, right? We talk a lot about wood as a product, but sometimes, or many times, I think we forget about the humans who are behind timber extraction. There is a potential risk increase of forced labor in the industry. And I wonder how much, not just in native forests, but also in plantations, with the increase of timber requirement now, right, with this boom of mass timber. I wonder how the discussion and also all the industry that is working, the partners that are working in this industry, they can also look into the social aspects of this field, right? Plantations also, there are a lot of controversy in the question of water and displacement of communities. And again, I think this whole issue of forced labor, so I just wonder how much we could also include more and more the conversation of the social aspects under the timber conversation.
Thank you for that question. Cindy Chung, do you want to have a quick go at responding to it?
I think from the FSC perspective, we recognize there's a lot of challenges and also issues that people are looking for solutions. And from FSC, we try to work with our stakeholders to resolve these situations and work together, be it environmental and social, which the lady just now brought forward, and also with the economic sector, where that the business is residing. So I think for us, it's like we're trying to work with our stakeholder community and the general, with all the different stakeholders within the sector, the community, to identify these issues and work together. I think this is the most important, is the collaborative approach and the balance, to strike the balance in all the different aspects of people coming from different viewpoints.
Okay, thank you for that, Cindy, and thank you for your question. We could go, everybody on this stage will have a version of answer for your question, but we do have to keep moving. And let's move to the next phase of this conversation. I think, we have established so clearly the technological possibilities of timber, not only for use, for industrial use, construction, etc., but expressly for such use in a climate net zero context. But we are an informed crowd, ladies and gentlemen, experts on the panel, experts on the floor, and as Dr. Park pointed out, there is just very, very little awareness of this in the general public, not only in the general public, but also amongst policymakers. So what we do need is some effort to sort of spread the word, to get the message out there of the sustainable possibilities of wood, not only for use, but also expressly as a climate policy tool. So then in the next phase of this discussion, we're going to consider one way of getting the message out. The FAO, together with the Sustainable Wood for a Sustainable World Partnership and the Forest Communicators Network of the Collaborative Partnership on Forests, are proposing, have planned a global campaign to get that message out. And very happy that Thijs is going to speak to that for us. Thank you, Thijs.
Thank you, James, and thanks to all these panelists, because we had, I think, a very insightful presentation here on all the possibilities of wood. And never forget that forests are a lot of things. They are trees, they're soils, they're biodiversity, there are animals, there are peoples, and there is wood. So when we discuss wood, we are not discussing, we are not against forests. We are part of forests, and it's one of the important ecosystem services that forests provide. And I have the pleasure to be working with the Sustainable Wood for a Sustainable World organizations and a number of other partners, some of them represented here today. And we have been discussing with the Forest Communicators Network on why we are all aware of all these possibilities of wood. We have the technological possibilities. We know that wood is a renewable material, a recyclable material, a reusable material, a material with multiple purpose, multiple functionalities, and still we cannot mainstream it. And more than that, there is still a lot of prejudice. We heard here today about how hard it is to produce sustainable wood and to manage our forests, and we know that we need to manage our forests well so that they can grow, they can continue to host biodiversity, they can continue to store carbon, but still the role of wood in this process is jeopardized, is not really valued. So Mr. Vicente, when he delivered his presentation this morning, he said, we are at the beginning of a revolution. Mr. Park said, there is no consumer awareness. So together with the Forest Communicators Network of the Collaborative Partnership on Forests, FAO has been discussing what we need to do. And we said, look, we need a campaign. We need a global campaign that can really build this consumer awareness, but more than build awareness, we need action. Because we can build awareness, people can be informed, does not really mean that they will take action. So we wanted this plenary to offer something concrete. So more than offering information, more than offering awareness, we wanted to end this plenary, use this moment, use this fantastic audience to propose something concrete. And we are proposing here a media campaign. And it's a media campaign, it's a proposal, it's a concept. It's a media campaign that can be joined by everyone. It's basically offering for those who believe in the need of mainstreaming wood to build a sustainable bioeconomy, to reach climate neutrality, that we all can embrace. All stakeholders, governments, private sector, civil society, people, we all can embrace. We all can get together around this and build, really make this momentum that wood, the technology is building for wood, but making this bring the real transformation that we need. And the transformation, the important thing I want to highlight about the transformation is that when you have a technological change, there is always the possibility that this change reaches only one segment of our society or some regions of the globe. But for this to really work, because we have global challenge, we need these possibilities to reach the whole world. And that's why we need a global campaign, because we need to really catalyze change everywhere. We need to be able to engage smallholders, that has been discussed here. We need to engage developing countries, that has been discussed here. We need to engage everyone in this process.
Grow the solution. What do we all think? I like it, I think. Thijs, I think you wanted to make a comment.
Thank you, James, and thank you very much, Robert. And I just want to emphasize, Robert said, we need a simple message. And we need a simple and one message that we can repeat, we can use everywhere, all the time. So if we want this revolution to take place, if we want this revolution to reach every corner of the world, if we want this revolution to really deliver the results that we need to take action now. We need to really speed up our efforts. So the proposal here is to come together, to invite stakeholders. When you go back to your capitals, go back to your homes, talk to your people, because we need to get together around growing the solution. Thank you.
Thanks very much indeed, Thijs. Yeah, Robert, I thought you did a terrific job, especially after a 40-hour journey and all the stress involved in that. Well done. I think we've just got a couple of minutes. I'd love to hear the reaction of one or two of our panelists. This is a very kind of live, on the hoof kind of a proposal project. Minister Matondo, what did you think of that presentation? Did you have any thoughts?
Merci. Moi, je crois beaucoup au rôle de la forêt, je crois beaucoup au rôle du bois. Et nous avons vu, à partir de toutes les présentations, qu'on peut tout faire avec l'eau.
Thank you very much. I understand and appreciate the role of forests and wood products. Wood is renewable resource. We can produce and manufacture many different things using wood. So I believe that forests and wood can be part of our economy. As for countries like my country, it is important to utilize locally available resources, which are wood products. And by doing so, we can create sustainable architecture and sustainable buildings, and we can create a sustainable economy. I believe in forests.
Grow the solution then, Minister. Who else would like to make a comment? Eduardo, what do you think?
Well,
just expressly on the presentation. I just want a quick take on the presentation, nothing more.
I think the idea is perfect, and the challenge really is to be able to leave the logic of black carbon. In the past, we were based on it, and now we want to decarbonize. No, it's about to understand the logic of green carbon that is dynamic. This is a real threat for communication, to get out of here where we are convinced and go out and be able to explain that this is not an antithesis between black carbon and leaving the forest untouched, which is very well explained by Mark Pallai, director of the European Forest Institute. It's a typical trap that this fossil economy is bringing, that the reaction is to go to the opposite, trying to search a non-existing wild nature, which is in the fact closing the escape gate, and to come back to understand the logic where humanity was before the 18th century, but with the modern technology, in that we come back to the green permanent cycle, and we understand the processes, which at the end also the ecologists, the good ecologists explain. It is about the process, and go back to the process and understand the logic of a dynamic carbon.
Thank you, Eduardo. Jane, I'm sure you're no stranger to ad campaigns. What did you think of that proposal?
I love it. I think it's clear-cut. I think it's incisive. I think it's splendid. And I think it's also true, because we are growing the solution. You know, maybe not today, but Sumitomo are building a tall building. They are breeding the trees now. They've planted the trees. Those trees are being grown into that solution as we sit here. So it's perfect.
Yeah, it's a very elegant image. Dr. Pak, last thought from you. What did you think of the proposal that we've just seen?
Yes, it was quite impressive to me too. And I would say we developed some good skills and technology in the science-based, natural science-based or engineer-based. But when I see the campaign, I also realized again that we need to introduce other concepts, other perspectives from other fields. So we need to make some kind of more investment on social science, and we need to develop some good logic to persuade general people. Thank you so much. Good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pak. I liked it too. I liked the proposal. I liked the positivity of the proposal. Who made the point? I think, was it you, Eduardo, that consumers get turned off by being told that they can't, it's dangerous, it's going to kill them, it's going to kill their children, they're burning the planet. This is entirely a positive message, which, for my part, I think, leverages off something that is ingrained. I too have had a sense that the forests were sacred, shouldn't be exploited. Growing up as a child, when the Amazon rainforest was burning and was the main news headline in environmental news of the 80s and 90s. But at the same time, I do feel I have an innate respect for wooden products. We respect wooden toys more than we respect plastic toys. there is that respect, I think, in our cultures. And we're really building on that, telling people that these are precious products, but they're also extremely practical products, and they make sustainable sense, and perhaps too they can make economic sense too. I've really, really enjoyed this plenary. Thank you for attending it. Thank you for the question that we've had. And please join me in thanking all of our splendid panelists, Minister Matondo, Sham Satkaru, Eduardo, Cindy, Jane, Jose Pablo, Dr. Hyun Park, Tice, of course, and then Robert Grace, our exhausted but valiant ad executive from South Africa. Thank you all very much.